All right, let's jump right into this explainer by looking at a very specific piece of clothing that's basically taking over TikTok right now. I'm talking about the quarter zip. Now, a lot of mainstream media just wrote this off, right? They called it just another fleeting Gen Z trend. But the article we are discussing today looks so much deeper than that. It actually zeroes in on how young black men, who are referred in the text through the cultural shorthand of the YN segment, are adopting the quarter zip. And you guys, this isn't just about throwing on a new sweater. It signals a genuinely profound shift in personal style, in identity, and honestly, the sheer courage it takes to step outside of expected cultural boundaries.
Which brings us right to the core question we really need to unpack today. What actually happens when you break the style rules of your peer group? It's a question that affects every single one of us, but the stakes can be incredibly high depending on your community. As you'll see, the article we are discussing reveals a pretty powerful truth. Clothing choices? They are rarely just about fabric or warmth or utility. No way. They are fundamentally about identity and self-determination. When you decide to change how you dress, you aren't just changing your clothes. You are directly challenging the unspoken rules of the people around you.
To really grasp why the quarter zip is such a massive deal here, we've got to look at a stark visual contrast. So, on one side, you have the traditional stereotype of the finance bro. The article paints this as your typical tall, blonde guy working in corporate finance, where the quarter zip is, basically standard issue. But then, on the exact opposite side, we have what the piece calls the YN uniform. This look is heavily rooted in athleticism and cultural expression. We're talking Nike tech garments and do-rags. It is a massive cultural leap. The quarter zip traditionally belongs to one specific world, while the YN uniform belongs to an entirely different one.
Let's break down that YN uniform a bit more, because it's absolutely crucial to the context. This style is heavily influenced by hip-hop and hood culture. It's marked by really specific items: Nike tech, do-rags, baggy pants, hoodies, Timberland boots, the whole shebang. Now, what's really critical to understand here is that these items are worn with immense pride. However, the text also points out that they're sometimes worn for occasions where they might not be, let's say, traditionally appropriate, which can unfortunately lead to some unpleasant situations. Because more than just fashion, these garments actually function as strict tribal signals. They literally broadcast to the world exactly what group you belong to.
And this brings us to a frankly brilliant illustration of the intense cultural friction surrounding these exact garments. Meet Marvel's Captain Durag. He was created for a children's animated show by a black artist, and his whole design is heavily inspired by the exact aesthetic we just broke down. I mean, the durag, the sporty gear, it's essentially the superhero take on the YN style. It was very clearly meant to be a nod to this specific cultural expression.
But wow, as the article highlights, the reaction was explosive. Just a quick glance at the internet shows immediate, super loud calls for the character to be canceled. And the author notes a really fascinating contradiction here. There's a heavy stigma placed on young men for not dressing in the YN uniform within their peer groups, right? Yet when they finally got a superhero inspired by that very same aesthetic, the community backlash was swift and brutal. This neutrally, but really powerfully demonstrates the intense scrutiny and the complex emotional weight that surrounds these specific cultural markers.
That actually brings us perfectly to this incredibly powerful quote from the text. Departing from it invites scrutiny before it invites admiration. I mean, think about it. Why do so many men dress just to fit their group, rather than develop their own personal style? It's simple. Social environments often punish deviation. Wearing the group's uniform basically says, hey, I belong here, I am safe, and I'm not a threat to our group's identity. Stepping outside of that, say, by suddenly showing up in a quarter zip, is incredibly uncomfortable because it means you stop dressing for the comfort of the group and you have to start facing their judgment head-on.
Now, the psychology behind why pushing through that scrutiny is so vital is honestly absolutely fascinating. The article introduces us to this concept called enclothed cognition. It was formalized by researchers Adam and Galinsky back in 2012, and it's the psychological principle that what you wear systematically influences how you think and how you carry yourself. It's not just about how other people perceive you. When you put on a garment that's associated with a particular identity, your brain actively triggers the mental associations tied to that specific identity. It's like a real-life cheat code for your brain.
So, the crucial point here is that dressing with intention actually actively changes your own psychology. It is an internal shift. If you're a young man trying to break a cycle, wearing clothes that reflect the man you choose to become, rather than the man your peer group expects you to be, literally wires your brain to become that new person. You are utilizing psychology to your absolute advantage. It's a real game changer.
Let this thought really sink in for a second. The clothes are not just a signal to the outside world, they are a signal to yourself. This is exactly why breaking away from group captivity isn't just some superficial, shallow fashion choice. It is a profound act of self-determination. You are quite literally taking control of your internal narrative just by changing your external presentation.
Which is exactly where the quarter zip re-enters our story as a total hero piece. The article views the quarter zip as the perfect bridge for young men looking to break the cycle of that tribal uniform and step into timeless, classic menswear. It serves as this fantastic visual stepping stone. It's not a full, super intimidating suit, but it is a clear, intentional step away from baggy hoodies and athletic gear. It occupies this highly useful, very approachable middle ground.
And the article gives some excellent, highly practical styling tips on how to actually master this transition. The quarter zip works so well because it adds structure without that stiff formality. The zippered placket creates a visual focal point that a regular, plain pullover just lacks. To do it right, they suggest choosing neutral colors, think camel, navy, olive, or oatmeal, in merino wool or cotton blends. Wear it over a clean Oxford collar, pair it with well-fitted trousers, and suddenly, boom, you have this really sharp, smart, casual aesthetic. The fit and fabric are key here. Your surrounding choices are what determine whether the look reads as intentional style or just lazy athleisure.
Let's move on and see how this all builds into a really actionable journey. Transitioning from a tribal uniform to real personal taste requires a process. First off, you gotta stop asking for permission from your peers. Just stop. Second, you need to develop a tolerance for that initial social judgment we talked about earlier. It's going to be uncomfortable for sure before it becomes confident. And third, start building an interchangeable wardrobe based on versatile, cohesive pieces. This is basically the definitive roadmap to developing your own taste without being held captive by any group's expectations.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important question. I want you to look at your own wardrobe and ask yourself, are you dressing for the group or are you dressing for the man you want to become? The journey of self-determination starts the very moment you decide to take ownership of your identity. And sometimes, that journey begins simply by putting on a quarter zip. Think about that the next time you get dressed in the morning. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.